when we begin to realize that the 200-year experiment we've called the American healthcare system has failed. Tune in to Awakened Wellness with Mylaine Riobe, MD, and join the conversation about how to heal our broken system to reverse our current health crisis. The entire world is looking for answers, and the truth is hidden in plain sight. Learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness every Wednesday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time with live video shows every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, when you can call in and ask the questions that matter most to you.
We're live.
Thank you, Rachel. Good afternoon and welcome to Awakened Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Mylaine Riobe, and today we are going on an eye-opening, mind-expanding adventure into how to boost your immune system. So immunity has never been more important. We're entering year two of, or we're ending year two, I should say, of a pandemic that's plagued us since I guess December of 2019. While we've made some improvements, the death tolls are still fairly high. We have new strains popping up. And so getting our immune systems to function on our behalf has never been more important. And it's striking with a pandemic, coronavirus, but it's also the immune system is involved in almost every disease that we get, from heart disease to Alzheimer's, dementia, to autoimmune disorders. So our immune system is critical to all body function, and not just for prevention of infections, but it's brought to light during these times. So we're live today. Today is December 1st, 2021, and we are live on Dream Vision 7 Radio. And I hope that you all had a wonderful and safe Thanksgiving holiday. Our number here is area code 646-558-8656. Our meeting ID is 883-695-3587. And as always, to raise your hand, just hit *9. I would love to hear any comments or questions you may have regarding this very broad and complex topic. So in order to know how to boost our immune system, we have to have some fundamental understanding of what the immune system actually is. And it's something we have little understanding about in medicine. It's understood that it is a very complex, multi-systemic function of the body that protects us from foreign invaders, whether they be bacteria, whether they be viruses, fungus, or toxins, chemicals. Our body is extremely well equipped, or at least it should be extremely well equipped, to deal with things that are not of itself. So somehow nature built into us the ability to distinguish what is ourself from what is not ourself. And that's a critical function to know, who belongs in the body and who doesn't belong in the body. And it's made even more astounding when we consider that 100 trillion bugs actually live in the human body and are known to be part of us. So they're actually distinguished as us. And so now the immune system has to figure out, well, who's not us? And then it has to mount a defense. So as soon as something crosses in our field, our immune system should be activated and should immediately begin to attack the invader and kill it and then get rid of it. And so throughout history, we have seen that the human immune system has not always been the strongest. About 100 years ago, the main cause of death was infection. And last year, for a time, or this year, I should say, because this year's not over yet, in 2021, infection again became the leading cause of death. It had been replaced by cardiovascular disease and cancer, but it surpassed cardiovascular disease and cancer this year as the number one cause of death. I think globally, definitely in the United States. We have a question come in? No. Okay. So what is immunity, right? So we can only really talk about immunity in terms that we know. There's so much we don't know about the immune system. We just know that it's delicately balanced like everything else in the body. So the immune system requires a very delicate balance. So it needs to know when to be turned on and then when to be turned off. So when we have an imbalance, whether it needs to be turned on, but it doesn't get turned on, or something triggers it to turn on, but it doesn't turn off, then we run into problems, right? So if our immune system doesn't get turned on when we have a foreign bug invading us, then we can't fight that bug and we get sick. When the immune system is turned on and we can fight the bug, but then we can't turn off the immune system when it's time to stop fighting the bug, then that's a problem too, and we get sick in a whole different way. And part of that, I think we're starting to see as what's being labeled as long COVID. Long COVID is like, okay, the acute infection's over, but I still have all this inflammation everywhere. I can't shut it off. And that appears to be what long COVID is. So our immune system is very delicately balanced by every system. So there's not a cell in your body that doesn't have the ability to trigger the immune system and to have it work on its behalf. So if we cut our finger, it's our immune system that will immediately summon help, detect that you've been cut. It will call in local immune cells and then sound the alarm to get more immune cells to come. And then it'll start to stop the bleeding, right? So that you don't bleed to death. It's your immune system that prevents you from bleeding to death when you cut yourself. And then it's also the immune system that will then mount a defense. It wants to seal up your skin as quickly as possible. And then it wants to make sure no invaders got through your skin. And if invaders got through your skin, it will mount an inflammatory response, call in what are called killer cells, and will kill the invaders. So to stop bleeding and to prevent infection, we rely on the immune system. So we know there are certain cells that regulate immunity and manage immunity. So we call them T cells and B cells. The T in T cell stands for thymus, which is a gland that's in the chest, and that's where T cells mature. B cells stand for bone marrow cells. So they are made in the bone marrow. T cells will then differentiate or mature into, when they're activated, into what are called helper T cells, which mount an immune response, and suppressor T cells, which will regulate and calm down the immune response. And those keep balance. And then there are killer T cells, which go out and kill invaders. B cells will retain memory of the invader and make antibodies. And so T cells, once they're born in the marrow and then they go to the thymus, they will then be deployed throughout different regions of your body to just kind of stand guard. So they will find themselves in your lymphatic system. So those glands that you can feel throughout your body, they are where T cells live. And they're just surveilling, and they're watching out. They're protecting you. They are also in the gastrointestinal system. There are a lot of T cells in the gastrointestinal system. Your gastrointestinal system has 3 distinct places where T cells hang out. 2 of those places are very easily removed with surgery, and there are a lot of surgical procedures to remove them. One is the tonsils. Unfortunately, many children have their tonsils removed when they become swollen. Well, the reason they're becoming swollen is because they're mounting a defense and defending those children. And when we remove the tonsils, we remove a layer of defense. And those children will then grow up with a compromised immune system. We also remove the appendix often. That sometimes we have to remove. Appendicitis is deadly if left untreated. And so that's a more necessary surgery where we have to remove the appendix to save someone's life. The downside of that is where immune cells live and surveil. And so we have a reduction of immunity when the appendix is removed. The third place they hang out is in the small intestine, in places called the Peyer's patches. And then they also live in what's called the mesentery. The mesentery is that fatty layer that covers the gastrointestinal system. It is teeming with T cells and other immune cells that are there to defend you. When I was in residency doing my surgical rotations in gynecology, we were kind of taught just to remove that because it was just in the way. Of course, now there's been considerable research done on the mesentery, and we understand now how critically important it is for our immune system. And so we're kind of leaving it in now instead of yanking it out because it's in the way. I firmly believe now more than ever that that nature doesn't make extra parts. It doesn't just make parts just in case, or that are redundant or unnecessary. And so before we remove a part, we'd want to make sure that it's absolutely essential and life-saving to do so, and not life-harming potentially. So we learn, unfortunately, through mistakes in medicine oftentimes. So the immune system comes from our stem cells in our bone marrow. Stem cells are what are called those God cells. They are the cells from which our entire body is made after conception. And they can become any cell that's needed in the body. And one of the critically needed cells are immune cells. And so stem cells do become immune cells. And anything that would reduce stem cell production would then reduce immunity. So when we look at boosting our immune system, we look at what can we do to help our stem cells to stay alive, to help our stem cells to reproduce themselves efficiently. So in looking at what reduces immunity, we have to first understand what the purpose of immunity is and what it is to the best of our ability. So it's a defense. It's like a force field in the body, very tightly regulated, right? You have to know when something's allowed to go in, like our food, for example, or herbs, for example, and when something is not allowed to go in, like chemicals and toxins and infectious bacteria, the most famous of which now is COVID. Your body needs to understand that COVID doesn't belong inside of you, whereas it understands that there are certain bacteria and viruses that do belong inside of you that are actually part of the human body. So the immune system's really brilliant. So what are the things that erode our immunity? Like, why is our immune system not functioning? Why was infection the number one cause of death 100 years ago? And probably throughout history, infection has been a huge cause of death. And so the question is, well, why? Why does nature not have a fix for immunity? And why are we so vulnerable to infection? The quick and dirty answer, as always, is stress, right? So, the last several thousand years in particular, as far back as we can look with our archaeological evidence, the human species has been under stress, sometimes very acute stress. And today, over the past several hundred years, it's been more of a long, drawn-out chronic stress. Acute stress actually mounts an immune system response because it would be equivalent to, for example, getting a cut or, God forbid, being bitten by a predator or something like that. So acutely, your immune system would respond very aggressively to that, stop the bleeding, prevent infection. But if the stress goes on and on and on, what we're finding out is your immune system actually kind of just shuts off. It shuts itself off after a while. So after about a minute or two, it will start to suppress itself so that it's not constantly on. And we see that a lot. We see that the human immune system is suppressed, often very, very suppressed. There's a test that I do for some clients of mine out of Greece called Immune Frame by a lab called RGCC. We do it mostly for cancer patients, but I've been doing it for some patients that I know not to have cancer. And the results are always the same. The immune system is always suppressed whenever someone has a chronic illness or cancer. And so I began to think like, this is just ubiquitous. And so what do we do to reduce that? So the first thing that causes our immune system to fail, if you will, is chronic stress. And, we have a lot of conversations on our podcast about chronic stress, what it is. Chronic stress can be felt, such as, panic over a pandemic, or God forbid, getting sick. It can be financial stress. It can be worry about potential illness, or if a relative gets sick, that can cause a stress. Stress can be in the form of chemicals, or what I call stealth, like not seen. We don't see the chemicals in the air. We look up at the sky, it's still blue and pretty. We look in the water, most of the time it's still clear and pretty. The soil doesn't look different than it's ever looked. So it's not visible to us that the atmosphere is teeming with over 80,000 chemicals. It's only visible to us if we look microscopically at the air. If we look microscopically at the water or at the soil, then we can see the chemicals there, but they're not visible to the naked eye. So we call that stealth, but that still is a chronic stress. So our cells are also not visible to the naked eye. It's when we compress them into 100 trillion cells that we see a body. So each little cell is also invisible to the naked eye. So that chemical that we can't see with our eyes is huge to a cell. And a cell, remember, is the basic building block of the body. So it's its own little independent factory, if you will. And when there's a toxin that comes into that factory, it stops functioning. And if you have enough toxins coming in, enough of those little cells will stop functioning. And that's what allows a lot of disease, including cancer and infections, to take place. Toxins are known to suppress the immune system because they represent a stress. Chemicals are known to suppress the immune system. For example, mercury toxicity is known to suppress the immune system. Arsenic toxicity is known to suppress the immune system. So this is well known in the medical literature. Another thing that is suppressive, in other words, it shuts our immune system down, is dehydration. And we are notoriously dehydrated as a society. We just simply cannot drink enough water. So it's a battle to get people to drink enough water. Most people need at least 70 ounces of water. And if you're very highly active, or if you work outdoors, in a hot environment, or indoors in a hot environment where you're sweating a lot, or if you're an athlete and you're doing a lot of exercise where you sweat a lot, you need even more water. And it becomes very difficult for people to catch up with their water necessity. And there's a common misconception that, well, my body will tell me when I need to drink water, I'll feel thirsty. And we're finding out that that's not really true. One of the means by which we're finding this out is through the study of traditional Chinese medicine. There are patterns of disharmony that lead to dehydration, but we don't feel thirsty enough to drink water. One of those patterns is what is called blood deficiency. So one of the telltale signs of blood deficiency is you feel thirsty, your mouth is dry, but you don't like to drink a lot of water. So you might drink water in small sips, So at the end of the day, you haven't really had a lot of water. And that's a classic sign. I'm thirsty, but I don't feel like drinking water. So I'll just take little sips throughout the day. And women in particular tend to be blood deficient, as we've discussed in previous podcasts. So we're kind of notoriously dehydrated for that reason. And so we have to really bring hydration to the forefront of our minds and force ourselves to drink water. Now, there are other things that cause dehydration, like what causes dehydration? Well, blood deficiency is one. And blood deficiency is not anemia. So I just want to be clear. You don't have to have a lab that tells you you're anemic to be blood deficient. In fact, when the lab finally does show you that you're anemic, you have been blood deficient for a long, long time. Blood deficiency is an energy pattern in Chinese medicine. So sometimes you'll see spots in your vision. You might feel dizzy when you get up too fast. You might have what are called scanty periods where you don't have a lot of blood flow. And there are other signs. And one of them is, I feel thirsty, but I don't feel like drinking water. And that's really all you need. And then when you check the tongue, it looks a little pale. And then the pulse is typically thinner than it's supposed to be and perhaps weak. And that's all you need to diagnose blood deficiency. Anyone who's blood deficient is dehydrated because blood is actually moistening. And so as women in particular, we kind of have to force ourselves to drink water. There are other factors, if you're on a diuretic for high blood pressure or heart failure, you're going to be even more dehydrated. And of course, you want to be careful because the normal mechanisms that would manage your water, if you have heart failure, you might be on water restriction on purpose so that your heart failure doesn't get exacerbated or worsened. And so if you're on a diuretic, you want to be careful with how much water you drink. So that's a bit of a slippery slope. So we're coming up on our first commercial break. We are talking about how to boost the immune system. The first part of the show is what causes us to have to boost our immune system. So we're talking about what suppresses immunity. We'll talk about the other two factors when we come back from this commercial break, and then we'll spend some time talking about how to fix that. So thank you for joining me on Dream Vision 7 Radio. You're listening to Awakened Wellness, and we'll be right back.
What happens when we begin to realize that the 200-year experiment we've called the American healthcare system has failed? Learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness on Awakened Wellness with Mylaine Riobe, MD. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time with live video shows every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, when you can call in and ask Dr. Mylaine the questions that matter most to you. Dr. Mylaine is the medical director of the Riobe Institute of Integrative Medicine in Jupiter, Florida. For more information, visit RIOBE-integrativemedicine.com. Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you in for this dynamic, forward-thinking show.
Join Dr. Bernie Siegel on Mind Health Matters every Thursday and Friday, 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. Bernie will draw from his inspirational personal journey, offering us special nuggets of his sacred wisdom weaved through his delightful stories. Listen in as Bernie reminds us to be fully engaged in life.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book, have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
Looking for a fun and relaxing getaway? Omega Rest and Rejuvenation Retreats are a great way to unwind and renew your spirit. Sit and read in the garden, explore the woodland trails, or try a daily yoga or meditation class. You can stretch your body, quiet your mind, and do as much or as little as you choose. Located in Rhinebeck, New York, just 90 miles north of New York City, Omega's natural environment and quiet pace allow for extraordinary experiences to unfold. Learn more at eomega.org.
Delight your kids with an enchanting journey by reading the Paper Doll Kids children's book by Deborah Beauvais and Janine Sullivan. There's even a catchy tune, Kids for Love Song, produced by Bob Sherwood and sung by kids just like yours. The story weaves around 7 paper dolls flying around the world doing good deeds as they bring important attention to our endangered animal friends. There's even a magical ring with a universal message. Kids become interested in service projects, action through compassion, and planting seeds that nurture positive change. The Paper Doll Kids and Kids for Love Song are a production of the Kids for Love Project. Get the book now on Amazon Kindle and the song on CD Baby or iTunes.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
And we're back.
Thank you, Rachel. Welcome back to Awakened Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Mylaine Riobe, and we had some awesome questions come in. So let's see. I've read on my newsfeed this past year that Motrin would lower my immunity to COVID. So I've tried not to use any, but my headaches and muscle aches still occur. So I've tried Tylenol, yet then I read that hurts my liver. I'm only left with wine. Is there any truth to Motrin being bad for the immune system? So yes, there is. And it goes back to what we talked about, that our immune cells come from stem cells. Stem cells are killed by a lot of things, toxins, chemicals, and also a lot of the over-the-counter and prescription anti-inflammatories that we use that are artificial and synthetic also kill stem cells. So you're reducing your immunity because you're killing your stem cells, and now your immune cells, which don't last very long, can't be replaced. So immune cells are not there forever. Once they're activated, they're used, and then they die, and they have to be replaced by fresh cells. So you don't want your immune system worn out. You don't want a bunch of old, worn out cells trying to protect you. You want fresh, new cells being regenerated all the time. They are generated from stem cells, and Motrin and aspirin and ibuprofen, prednisone, all of these synthetic artificial anti-inflammatories actually kill stem cells. And so that would be the mechanism for why you would be more susceptible to COVID. So it's ironic that the thing that's supposed to improve our immune system actually damages our immune system. And the reason for that is because it's artificial. If it were a natural agent that were used in balance, we wouldn't see that effect. So we're going to talk towards the end of our podcast today, we're going to talk about all the natural anti-inflammatory agents that you could use that will not kill your stem cells, and that will actually help boost your immune system. So the key is to keep it natural. Wine, although it's kind of sort of natural, is not good for the liver either, right? So it's worse than Tylenol. So we'll talk about some other options for your pain towards the end of the show, but that's a great question, and thank you for asking that. Question, are T cells something I can get from a doctor? I think I've seen T cell advertisement on a billboard. You're probably talking about stem cells. So yes, stem cells you can get from a doctor. Those can be prescribed. They are FDA regulated and not FDA approved because they're not a drug. So it's kind of you can still use them off label as a physician. And so they can be used to boost immunity. So that's probably what you've seen is stem cells. So if your own stem cells have been killed because you've been on synthetic drugs or taking a lot of Motrin, you can get them, replaced. It's not cheap, but you can get them replaced. There are also some natural things that kind of recruit your own stem cells to kind of wake up and start to multiply again. And we'll talk about that later as well. Question, I've lost my appendix and tonsils. What can I do to boost my defenses? That's the whole next half of our podcast. So again, that's an awesome question. We will definitely talk about that. And another one, my wife was listening to another show on this network. She loves doctor shows. She's been harping on me about attitude and anger. She says the other show said it would make me sick. If I didn't change my attitude, it would make me sick if I didn't change my attitude. Is she full of crap? No, she's not. She's absolutely right. Anger and negative attitudes are what allows stress to do us in, because they're based in fear, right? So stress is the presence of fear by definition, right? It's that we're afraid of something. And that fear doesn't go anywhere. It stays with us. And that's what chronic stress is. Whether it's the introduction of toxins causing imbalance in the body that leads to the fear, whether it's mental fear, whatever it is, ultimately it's fear that creates stress. And stress is the root of all evil. I believe it was a Harvard study that relates about 95% of chronic diseases are due to stress. So yes, anger is just an extreme form of fear, but it's really just fear. And negative attitude is also just fear. And so, yes, fear makes us sick. Now, there's good fear, right? So if we're being chased by a predator, it's a good thing to be afraid, right? And fight or run. But we don't want to have a ghost predator following us around all the time when there's really nothing there to be afraid of. And that's where calling in on a higher power, our higher selves, if you will, or spirit or God, whatever you wish to call it, becomes extremely important, because in the absence of that, we keep grasping at straws, because nothing in the physical world can give us comfort, right? It has to be something outside of the physical world that comforts us. And that's why I also like heart math so much, because the human heart is in the physical world as an organ, but it's also outside of the physical world as an energy field. And that's being shown by science now. Also, of course, taught to us by many ancient traditions, the sacred heart, going within the heart. So the heart is the connection between the non-physical and the physical. And so we have to anchor into the heart. And of course, the emotion of the heart is love, right? And when we look at fear, it's the distortion of love or the absence of love. That's what fear actually is. So it's really anchoring in love through the heart, which is a system that is beyond the physical and in the physical at the same time. So heart math would be a great tool. That's been shown to help reduce anxiety and anger and stress. So that's what I would recommend for that one. That's a great question. Thank you. I've had those black dots in my vision. I had no idea it was water related. I was afraid I was going to eventually go blind. It's not water related, it's blood related. So that's a blood deficiency symptom. And blood deficiency dehydrates you. So yes, you need to drink a ton of water, but you also need to replace your blood, so to speak. So some of the things that will replace blood are things like red dates, goji berries, red meat, but you have to be careful with red meat. If you're too acidic, you don't want to have red meat. You might want to have cage-free eggs or organic pork or poultry or fish. But you need to boost blood. And also green leafy veggies are also blood nourishing, but cooked. So it's not a sign of a water problem, it's a sign of a blood problem, which dehydrates the spots in your vision. So drinking a ton of water and boosting your blood is what you want to do there. And sleep is another thing that boosts blood. And that was going to be the third cause of an immune system problem, is lack of sleep. We make blood when we sleep. We also make components of our immune system when we sleep. So when we don't sleep enough, the components of our immune system that are needed to maintain that delicate balance don't get made. And so we get this, too much of either the immune system not functioning when we need it, or too much of it not being shut off when we need it to be shut off if we're not sleeping properly. So you make blood and you make all the components. You make your hormones while you sleep. You restore the body while you sleep. You make muscle and bone while you sleep. So you make your bone marrow while you sleep. And in Chinese medicine, we're taught that we sleep. When we sleep, we make blood. So another great observation. Thank you. And question, I've been trying to stop taking so many prescriptions. I see the side effects listed on Google. Is it possible to wean off these pills? It is possible, but under close supervision. And the thing about pills is they're filling a gap, right? So there's a gap, there's a need that the body doesn't have, which is why you had symptoms and then a medical condition or diagnosis. So there's a gap. And so prescription drugs are an attempt to fill this gap. The problem is it's like putting a square peg into a round hole, or putting the wrong jigsaw puzzle piece in and trying to slam it in place. So it's kind of this temporary stopgap, but the picture doesn't look right, So we get these side effects, and because the root of the gap was not fixed, it's not that we just needed a gap filled, right, and could throw anything in there. We had to fix the root of why the gap was there so that the gap would close itself. And prescription drugs don't allow that to happen. It just kind of fills the hole with whatever. So the gap is filled, and so you get a bit of a bridge and some relief, but it comes at a price. So you want to go back and look at the root of the gap. So the root of the symptoms, the root of the condition, fill that in properly. And then the gap will start to close itself. And then what I tell my clients is, don't just stop taking your medications. That's not safe. But what we want to try to do is to make those medications obsolete. So if you're on a diabetes medication that you want to get off of, you want to fix the root of why you have diabetes, right? And as you fix that root, the gaps will close, and then your blood sugar will drop by itself. And then you'll start feeling dizzy. And as you check your blood sugar, you'll see that it's going lower and lower and lower, to the point where you have to reduce your medication and maybe eventually go off of it. It would be the same thing with blood pressure medication, right? We want to fill that gap. Why do you have hypertension? What are the causes? Fix that, let the gap close by itself. And now your blood pressure will start to drop, where you might start to feel a little bit woozy and dizzy. And when you check your blood pressure, you see that it's dropping, and you might have to have your prescription adjusted to the point where it might have to be stopped, right? So you always want to do that under close supervision. And I would highly recommend a board certified integrative medical doctor who knows how to diagnose the root causes of symptoms, or a doctor of Oriental medicine who knows how to do that. So that's a great question. Thank you for those. I think we covered them for now. So we were talking about lack of sleep as the third reason why the immune system is suppressed, right? And again, we make everything while we sleep. So while we're awake and we're moving around, we're consuming everything. We're using up energy. We're taking everything off the shelves and using them. So it's only when we lay down and go to sleep that the shelves get restocked. And if we don't sleep enough, we're not going to replenish our supply. And then the next day when we get up, we feel tired, right? Because there's not enough on the shelf to keep us going. There's not enough energy. We didn't make enough energy overnight to power our day the next day. And so we feel tired. Or we get sick if that continues. If we compound that And, we're getting some really good valid studies now to show us that sleep deprivation is the root of all evil. And there's no disease you cannot get if you don't get enough sleep. And so in Chinese medicine, again, sleep is heavily emphasized. Women need at least 8 hours of sleep, and that's, just for maintenance. So if you have a sleep deprivation, if there were periods in your life where you didn't get enough sleep or you had trouble sleeping, you have to make up for that sleep. And in our regular medical model, we claim that we can't catch up on lost sleep. But that's because we would have to sleep a lot more than we're used to, and we would have to do that very consistently to buy back that time. So it's not that you can't buy back the time, it's that we have to go through measures that we're not used to doing. We'd have to sleep 9 and 10 hours every single night, in order to catch up. So women need at least 8 just for maintenance, 9 or 10 if you've been sleep deprived. Men need 7 for maintenance, and they may need more too if they too have been sleep deprived for any reason. And then the fourth reason that our immune system gets suppressed is gastrointestinal disturbances. So at the beginning of our podcast today, we talked about the 3 places where we defend ourselves through the gastrointestinal system: the tonsils, the appendix, and what are called the Peyer's patches in the small intestine. So time for our next commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about the gastrointestinal system, how it influences your immune system, and then we'll talk about how to balance your immune system with natural supplements and techniques. Thank you for listening. We'll be right back.
What happens when we begin to realize that the 200-year experiment we've called the American healthcare system has failed? Learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness on Awakened Wellness with Mylaine Riobe, MD. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time with live video shows every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, when you can call in and ask Dr. Mylaine the questions that matter most to you. Dr. Mylaine is the medical director of the Riobe Institute of Integrative Medicine in Jupiter, Florida. For more information, visit RIOBE-integrativemedicine.com. Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you in for this dynamic, forward-thinking show.
Edecia is a U.S. nonprofit dedicated to the dream of ending childhood malnutrition for millions of children around the world through the manufacture of Plumpy Nut and other nutrient-rich, peanut-based, ready-to-use foods. Edecia has already delivered life and hope to nearly 1 million children in over 26 developing countries. To find out how you can join Edecia's dream of ending childhood malnutrition, please visit edeciaglobal.org.
What if dreams can diagnose your life? What if we can meet the love of our life in dreams? Join host Kat O'Keefe-Canavis, the #1 internationally best-selling author of Dreams That Can Save Your Life, written with Duke University medical doctor Larry Burke. Dreaming Healing is where we'll explore dreams, research, and interpret dreams from you, the caller. Dreaming Healing shows can be heard every Tuesday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern, with live shows on the first and third evening at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific Time on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. Come live your dreams out loud with Kat.
Are you searching for a way to help create global change? Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's vision is to have an eclectic group of radio hosts dedicated to educating, enlightening, and helping humankind with positive messages and tools that enhance lives using different modalities and programs. If you would like to join our team and help illuminate the universe, call Deborah at 508-226-1723 or Deborah at dreamvision7radio.com. This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
We're back.
Thank you, Rachel. So gastrointestinal disturbances reduce immunity. So the first place were the tonsils, which are sadly often removed in children. The appendix, which is often removed out of necessity in children and adults. And then the Peyer's patches, which are in the small intestine. So if you listen to our podcast, you've heard me talk about the small intestine over and over and over, because it's a place that can easily get infected. And it's a very difficult infection to find unless you do very specific testing as is available in the field of integrative medicine. Most gastroenterologists don't test for this infection, and some really don't even believe in it. But it has been studied now by major institutions worldwide, including Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, Mount Sinai in New York, Johns Hopkins University in Maryland. So it is very real. And this infection is devastating from the standpoint of it takes out that third layer of defense, because when you have an infection in the small intestine, now you have a bunch of inflammation in the small intestine as the body is trying to fight this infection. The problem with having an infection in that specific place is the small intestine is where we absorb all of our food, all of our supplements, everything is absorbed through the small intestine. So if there's an infection there, we will not absorb properly. So we won't digest and absorb our food. So we're going to get vitamin deficient. Vitamin deficiency is a known cause of immune system failure. What happens when you have an infection in the small intestine is you get this catch-22 where you have an infection, your immune system can't mount a defense because you haven't been able to absorb your vitamins and minerals from your food. And now your immune system can't fight. So it gets dysregulated. So the inflammation's there, but it's not regulated. You're not getting any better because your immune system can't really fight. And so you get this downward spiral. And so now they're relating SIBO, or small intestine bacterial overgrowth, to a lot of different diseases, heart disease, kidney disease, diabetes, because of this vicious circle that gets set up. So when we look at, well, what can I do to boost my immune system? The first thing is to make sure you're not vitamin deficient. And if you are vitamin deficient, to take the vitamins that you need. And so the vitamins that we know for sure cause the immune system to fail, the vitamin deficiencies, that cause the immune system to fail are vitamins A, B vitamins, and there are many different B vitamins, folic acid, cobalamin, pyridoxine, so many different B vitamins. Their deficiency will cause your immune system not to function. Also vitamin C deficiency, vitamin D, which is really a hormone deficiency, vitamin E deficiency, or what's called alpha tocopherol, will cause your immune system to stop functioning properly. And then minerals, copper, selenium, iron, and zinc. So if you're deficient in any of those things, you want to take those supplements. Again, you can be tested for that. In fact, the testing that we do for vitamin deficiencies is a test of your T cells. So we draw your blood, goes out to a lab, they grow the T cells, the immune cells, and they actually test your immune cells for those vitamin levels. And so you also get an immune system score when you do this test. So you can actually see your immune system score improve over time as your vitamin deficiencies are corrected. So you don't want to just blindly take these vitamins. You want to know whether you need them or not, because if you don't need them, it's a waste of time to take them. And if you do need them, you need to know how deficient you are so that you can be properly dosed. The other factor is if you do have a small bowel infection, if you don't correct that, you won't absorb those vitamins well, right? Not that you won't absorb any of them, you'll absorb some, but not enough to mount a successful defense. So you want to make sure that if you have any gastrointestinal symptoms at all, heartburn, nausea, bloating after you eat, Even a decreased appetite can be a sign of this infection. Diarrhea, constipation, all of these things can be signs of a small bowel infection. And studies are showing that probably 7 out of 10 Americans have this infection and don't know it. And you don't have to have actual symptoms to have this infection. So it's very important to ask about this and to be properly tested. So that's what I would recommend. And some of the natural agents we can use are resveratrol, right, which is in the wine, but it's without all the side effects and the liver killing aspects of wine. So resveratrol is isolated from the grape skin. And so you can take it as a supplement or just have some grapes, red grapes in particular. Quercetin, which is a very powerful antioxidant. Curcumin, which is also known as turmeric, is a very good immune system regulator. Fish oil, but at fairly high doses, so you want to be a little bit careful with the fish oil, but even at lower doses, it should be of some benefit, especially if you're taking it in conjunction with the other nutrients that we're talking about. Citrus fruits, in particular, the peels, actually. You can actually make teas, boil the peels and the rind and actually just drink it. You can pour a little honey in there, so it's not too bitter. Genistein, which is a supplement, CoQ10, vitamin E, which we talked about before. Green tea is also very powerful for immune regulation, as well as ashwagandha, which is an adaptogenic herb. So ashwagandha helps boost immunity. It also helps mitigate the impact of stress. Magnesium is a very important mineral as well for regulating the immune system. Tart cherry juice is another. And then the Mediterranean diet has been shown also to help boost and regulate proper immunity. So these are some of the things that you can use instead of the Motrin and the Tylenol to help control pain, because they are by their nature anti-inflammatory and also help boost immunity. So what's important is not to always suppress inflammation. Inflammation is one of your body's defenses, so you don't want to just knock it out. And that's unfortunately what prednisone and Motrin and aspirin do. They just knock out the inflammation, which gives us temporary relief, right? So our muscles don't ache anymore and our headache is gone, but then we have to take more later because, again, we didn't treat the actual root of the pain. So taking things that are a little bit more natural like this will help you close that gap safer so that you don't have as much pain. And maybe you don't need to use the Tylenol as often, right? And then closing the gap more by finding out what the root causes of the pain, are. Oftentimes it's inflammation from your gut. So if you have an active infection in your body will constantly try to mount an immune response. It's not just going to quit, but it's not going to do it properly. It'll do what it can. It'll just kind of throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks if it has no other choice. So when we look at the root causes of why we have inflammation, we can allow the body to know how to regulate that inflammation. So inflammation is good, right? If I were to, break my arm, God forbid, but if I were to, I need inflammation to heal my arm. My arm cannot heal without the inflammation. But what I want to make sure of is that the inflammation occurs properly and it ends when it's supposed to end. So we want that proper balance. When we use things like Motrin and prednisone, we don't allow the inflammatory response to occur properly. And that's why when we look at studies on long-term Motrin and prednisone use, for example, we will see that it actually deteriorates our joints. And it actually causes strokes and other cardiovascular events because you're not allowing the inflammatory response to occur properly when you're artificially and mechanically trying to control it. So it's always better to fill in the gaps properly with natural things knowing what those natural things are so that the gaps are properly closed. And I'm not sure, given the 80,000 chemicals in the air, if anyone's ever going to have a perfect immune system. But if we don't actively promote balancing the immune system in our current environment, it's inevitable that we'll get sick. So we have to be very proactive, but in a natural way. And then stress reduction, right? And again, I talk about heart math till I'm blue in the face because I love it. It's just this quick and dirty and simple and effective method that takes literally 3 minutes to do. So if you're not a big meditator and you're not going to sit on your mat for 30 minutes twice a day, you can definitely sit anywhere for 3 minutes a day. Ideally 9, right? You want to do 3 in the morning, 3 middle of the day, and 3 later. But it's been shown to have a 6-hour lingering effect. Just these 3 minutes of breathing properly has been shown to have a 6-hour impact. And so if everybody just sits and does heart math 3 times a day, our immune systems would be better regulated. And then again, filling those gaps in naturally with guidance. In an ideal world, we should be able to just eat healthy, exercise, and sleep and stay well. We're not in an ideal world anymore. We are in a world filled with 80,000 chemicals. At least 10% of them are, will likely at some point, if they ever bother to study them, will be shown to cause disease. In fact, there are about 14 or 1,300, I don't remember, 1,300 or 1,400 chemicals that the United States allows to be put in its cosmetics that countries in the rest of the world have banned because they are known to be toxic. So while we have regulation in place, they were put in place in 1938 and they've never been updated. So all the new chemicals that have been put in the atmosphere since then, there's really been no regulation of these chemicals. And the FDA, if you go to their website, they will say, well, but they're not drugs, so we don't regulate them. And so they're allowed to just sit here. Meanwhile, they're banned elsewhere. So, oh, got it. Thank you, Rachel. All right, that's all the time we have. Thank you very much. And I'll see you next time. Many, many blessings.
Join us next time on Awakened Wellness with Mylaine Riobe, MD, to learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness. Awakened Wellness airs every Wednesday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time, with live video shows every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern of each month. Meanwhile, you can join our Facebook page at facebook.com/Awakened Wellness and let us know what you'd like to discuss on future episodes. Dr. Mylaine is the medical director of the Riobe Institute of Integrative Medicine in Jupiter, Florida. For more information, visit riobeintegrativemedicine.com. This show is part of the Dream Vision 7 radio network.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.